You are watching Tech Confessions, created by Amy Lewis and brought to you by VMware.
As you know, because I was just telling you, I'm so excited to meet you because vBrownBag has been something I've been hearing about for years. So I've got to ask, how did it start? How'd you come to it? Tell me.
So vBrownBag is a community collective. It's a group of people who come together to produce education for data center infrastructure professionals. It started back around 2008 when Cody Bunch, who was our founder and I refer to as the Podfather, was studying for his initial VMware certifications, and he lives in San Antonio and works for Rackspace. There weren't a lot of people doing VMware study around there, so he set up an online study group, and that's the origins for vBrownBag. Over time, it's expanded. I got involved in the sort of first expansion beyond Cody, which happened at the VMworld 2011 here in Las Vegas. And I met Cody himself. He was sitting barefoot, cross-legged on a hotel room floor at a party. And for those who know Cody, this is a very standard way of finding Cody. And he said, "Hey, I've got a podcast, would you like it?" And essentially at that show, he recruited about 3 more people to be involved. And I ended up being the host of the APAC edition of the show, and a number of other vBrownBag crew members joined at that point. And over the years since then, we've steadily expanded out. We now have around 25 people who have been part of the crew that actually produce the videos, and we have probably hundreds of volunteers who've produced the content on it, that have been producing hours and hours of video training content that's completely free to consume, and that they've given their time freely to the community to create. We have this massive body of video on our YouTube channel and on our iTunes feed of data center infrastructure training, covering everything through all of the VMware certifications, but also moving more recently into things like infrastructure as code and working with GitHub and AWS certifications. Wow,
so you're almost like Coursera before there was Coursera, but specifically for...
Specifically data center infrastructure professionals, and forward-looking beyond, realizing that when we started, VMware was really new and it was the exciting and hot thing, and just knowing VMware was really good for your career. Now, those same professionals and people who are coming into the industry are learning that VMware is an and. You must understand VMware and you must have something more to be differentiated. And so we're doing education for that and as well.
And what are the big ands today?
The biggest one we're seeing is AWS. So we started covering the AWS Solution Architect. We did the associate exam a couple of years ago. We did the associates for DevOps from memory, and we've just started a series to get to the professional level with the Solutions Architect. And that's the certification that most closely maps the job role of being the infrastructure guy in a data center when you move to a cloud model with AWS.
Wow. Have there been any ands that you thought would happen and didn't quite?
OpenStack. OpenStack in the enterprise was supposed to be this big, huge thing, and we got very involved in OpenStack. So in addition to doing the podcast, we also come to conferences and we provide a community stage. At VMworld we started, and we provide a stage where community members can present about something that wouldn't get accepted into the main schedule, because maybe it's not what VMware are focusing on this year, or they don't work for the right sponsor. And so we started with people whose sessions got rejected that we knew were really interesting. Steadily growing, we have gotten better at making those videos, not quite as extensive a setup as here, and certainly no comfy couch. But we do make video at every VMworld since 2012, and as of last year we're integrated into the content catalog and schedule builder, so people are actually finding us. So rather than most of the consumption of the video being afterwards, we now get audiences turning up live, and we had probably an average of 30 people turning up to each of our sessions. Popular ones would have 100, 110 people.
Wow.
There was a walkway past our stage, and it was building a crowd because there was just such interesting content on our stage. And it's really awesome to see all of this content that wouldn't be available out to the community if it wasn't for the vBrownBag stage, and the great support that we get out of the community to bring more technical content to conferences like VMworld that tend to be a little sales heavy for those of us who've been involved with VMware for a long time.
And I would take a gander too that some of it's almost a little bit more pure, because you're talking you can talk kind of outside of needing to be VMware presenting VMware.
Exactly. There's no VMware review of any of the presentations. In fact, I don't review the presentations. I review the abstracts to try and make sure that it is good community content, or if it's sponsors, we're a little more loose. We require sponsorship in order to run the tech talks, and so they get a little more latitude than I'll give somebody who's coming in as a community presenter. They must be about educating the community, not selling something, essentially.
So one question we love to ask on this show, I'll be very curious to hear your answer, is what was your software-defined moment?
I think for me it was a gradual awakening to the idea that a consistent and repeatable methodology is required by the way data centers are going to operate. And so we as infrastructure professionals need to be, rather than handcrafting our infrastructure, building it to perfection along the way, we need to be automating that process, and we need to have software-defined processes. My own experience of that was building AutoLab, which is the other thing outside of vBrownBag that I'm known for, is this vSphere nested virtualization lab that builds itself that you can use for training. And this is a entirely scripted build of the whole vSphere environment with Windows servers and domain controllers and a couple of ESX servers. Looking at the change in attitude that you have when everything has to be built by the scripting versus I can hand custom build it for this particular collection that I have. Like, I need a set of scripts that will run on your laptop, my ESX server running nested, and it'll run under VMware Workstation or run under VMware Fusion. It all needs to behave exactly the same, so I need this automation that builds out on top of very disparate potential infrastructure underneath. So for me, it was a sort of education process. There wasn't a light bulb moment so much as a growing awareness.
I think that's almost even better. A series of moments.
Yeah, well, it's continued today. Today I was talking to the Azure Stack team here at Dell and talking about the way that they've approached building their Azure Stack product, where this is an appliance. If you're thinking about individual servers and how they work and what their configuration is going to be, physical servers, you're doing it wrong. You need to think about this as a cloud infrastructure, and you really don't particularly care what's underneath. Let the vendor make that choice for you and then concentrate on your workloads. And so it's, again, a change in attitude.
Well, thank you very much for that. And for when you're ready to give your software-defined moment, please reach out to us at techconfessionstheshow.com.